Welcome to the Urban Complex, a system of interrelated, emotion-charged ideas, feelings, memories, and impulses. This name takes the definition and lays out what a listener should expect. A podcast where ideas, feelings, and memories collide, leading towards meaningful change. I'm co-host Chris Richardson. Please enjoy the journey with the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
Welcome to the Urban Complex. All opinions by Chris Richardson, Dominic Papa, and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arizona State University or Amazon Web Services. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any decisions. Any endorsement of or messages from sponsors are solely supporting the production of this podcast. There is no further relationship with podcast purposes than the sponsors unless separately created with another entity. Enjoy the Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow.
All right, Chris, here we are another week. What's top of mind for you, buddy?
Get that smile off your face. You know what I'm dreading. I got a text last week. What? Hey, did you see Russell Wilson's been traded? I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. And then like an hour later, Bobby Wagner's just released. And we are just cutting bait on that team. It's going to be an interesting year. But then again, the Hassan Adams 2 years before depleted us. We had no draft picks. Our team's getting old. So it could be a really long season because I didn't know who any of the people we got for Russell were. There's like three guys we get. I didn't know. I'd never heard of any of them. We got a bunch of picks. So I don't know.
Those who don't know, Chris is a big Seattle Seahawks fan. And not too happy. I think I see a tear over there in your eyes.
I am smiling by condition, but I'm not smiling inside.
I love it. Oh, so on a happier subject, I know we got someone great today. Who do we have?
Yeah, we have the mayor of Tempe, Corey Woods, which is really exciting because one of our first guests were Mark Wittenberg, Rosa and Chowski from Tempe, talking about the amazing things they're doing with data, talking about some of these things that the new mayor was planting as seeds. So this will be really neat. Plus, he was just a guest at our Smart Region event as the Connected Education panel. He was amazing. So it should be a really informative session.
Yeah, such a dynamic leader. This is going to be really fun. Should we bring him in?
Yeah, Tempe's just got a lot going on. Let's do it.
Here we go. Let's hear about it.
Support for this episode of The Urban Complex comes from Worldwide Technology.
What if we could connect people to new possibilities, turn thinking into a way forward, solve problems before they become a problem, and share the future with everyone? We can. At WWT, we connect businesses to technology to make the impossible possible, to reach better decisions faster, to accelerate progress. Together, let's make a new world happen.
All right, Mayor Woods, please let Dom and I give you a warm welcome to our podcast, The Urban Complex. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you both having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We just learned that the best way to get a rapport quickly with our audience is let the guests kind of talk a little bit about themselves and share any information you want the audience to know about you as an individual, your background, and kind of what led you to where you are today is what we're looking for.
So I would say that a lot of it was honestly just being around my parents for so many years. They didn't encourage me to go into politics. That wasn't exactly how it happened. But at the same time, I was at the dinner table with them for probably 2 hours every night. And we were having conversations, the two of them, myself and my younger brother, about politics and foreign policy, domestic policy, a little bit of everything. And I think I just sort of picked a lot of it up through osmosis, being around people who cared so much about just about life and public policy matters was just something that really got me interested at a very early age. And so I was very actively involved in student government from about fifth grade on. And then, had the opportunity to run for the city council back in 2008 and won that race and was elected mayor back in March of 2020. So for me, I think it was just sort of the culmination of being around people for so many years during my formative years, I should say, that cared so much about foreign and domestic policy, and me just sort of picking that up and thinking that might be a good way for me to contribute to the world.
Awesome. Great background. And you were at Arizona State, right, before you joined this as the mayor of Tempe. Anything about what you were doing there that you want to share as well? Give some context.
Sure. So I actually still am. I'm actually with ASU Preparatory Academy. I've been there for almost 5.5 years now. It's an incredible organization. It's their K-12 school division. I'm the chief of staff to our managing director, Julie Young, and I've had a great time working for them. And I'm glad that I'm still able to be there, even in my role as mayor. You know, we found a way to make both work where I can still contribute in a big way to ASU Prep and to their growth and development, but at the same time, work as the mayor of the city of Tempe and really kind of fulfill a dream that I've had since I was a child.
Awesome. Amazing to see the progress over there. So just like that, let's talk about the city of Tempe and your role as mayor. Assume our audience, Dom and I are both local. We ASU is adjacent or within Tempe, but assume people don't know much about Tempe. Tell us a little bit about Tempe itself and kind of frame the role as mayor, and we'll dig into the details as we go through the podcast.
Sure. So, just a quick overview. The city of Tempe has been around since 1874. We actually just celebrated our 150th anniversary, otherwise known as our sesquicentennial. And I've said that a number of times, which is why I can spit it out that quickly. But, we're a city of about 40 square miles. We are completely and totally landlocked. So all of the growth and development are not out there, all growing up in nature. We're a little under 200,000 people, but the population during the day swells to over 300,000, given all the people who come into the city of Tempe for work. And so it's a really incredible place. And of course, we have ASU right in our backyard, the largest public university in the country and the most innovative university, I believe now 8 years in running. So we're a really dynamic, forward-thinking community that I'm very proud to be a part of. And I think the best is yet to come.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if I could repeat that word, so I won't even try.
Come on, Dom.
It's a test.
Daniel, come on.
I love it. So, Mayor, this podcast is, centered around smart cities. And so, we really enjoy asking our guests kind of their description, their view of smart cities, because we know there's no one true definition. So we'd love to, ask you, what's your view of smart cities? Talk to us about what do you think makes Tempe smart? But please, give us some background on kind of how you perceive a smart city.
So, there are any number of things. I can first start, with talking about Arizona State University and the fact that we have, because of them and Maricopa Community Colleges, we have so many people in our community actually about approximately 40 to 50% of our population has a bachelor's degree, or if not more. So there are so many people in our community with bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level degrees. It's why it's such an attractive place for employers to either relocate here or perhaps expand an existing business. So I think that's one thing that makes us a very, very smart city that constantly is looking for ways to improve upon things that we've already done. I think about the way that we make decisions, quite honestly, as a city government. It's very much a data-driven process. We spend a lot of time talking with residents and trying to make sure that we're getting feedback and input about the things that people who either live or work in the city of Tempe want to make their lives or businesses more successful. But at the same time, we also use data to drive the decisions around here, because many times I might have a perception of something, but if that perception can't be backed up with some kind of empirical data, it sometimes becomes hard to begin to invest a lot of taxpayer resources into something if it just comes down to a hunch or just sort of my gut feeling. Of course, every now and then, that is how decisions are made, and sometimes they turn out to be right or wrong. But at the end of the day, we really do try to use kind of rich data to make decisions. A good example of that would be the COVID wastewater program we had here at the city of Tempe, where we were actually able to measure the levels of COVID-19 in our population broken down by zip code and different regions within the city, which really helped us to drive decisions around mask mandates and other issues surrounding kind of public health and how we could possibly mitigate and stop the spread of COVID-19. But that was a very proprietary system that we developed right here in the city of Tempe. So when we were talking about what measures we were taking, we weren't telling our residents that we're making them based on what was happening in Maricopa County or the state of Arizona or what you saw coming out of Washington, D.C. We could actually tell them we have Tempe specific data that is statistically significant and valid. And that's how we're making our decisions. And I found that went a long way to letting people know that we weren't just making decisions about mitigation strategies based on someone's hunch or data that might not be relevant or applicable to our city. And so I think those are just, a couple of examples of things that we do here that I think really do make us a smart city. But also it's just kind of a state of mind. We try to make decisions, kind of trying to always sort of be ahead of the curve at all times. We don't, we understand that the whole concept of if you think you can stand still and things will still be okay in your city, that's not true. Because when you stand still, other people start passing you. And so, that's always been my perspective as mayor. And it's something that I probably think about each and every morning when I get out of bed and come here to City Hall is how do we continue moving forward with all deliberate speed to make sure that we're always ahead of the curve and maintaining our role as a smart city in the Valley.
That's incredible. Chris, that reminds me of something Dr. Crow said. If you're not moving, you're dead. And so you're exactly
or if you're doing it the old way, you should get out of your job. I think you said too, right?
That's amazing. I mean, great leadership. And Mayor, you're exactly right. I mean, that, wastewater program, I mean, that's made national news. It's really setting the standard for smart governments around the country. And so that kind of leadership has just been incredible. And you're exactly true. I mean, your ability to really speak towards data-driven government, I mean, it reverberates through the entire organization. We had Mark and Rosa from, the city on our podcast, and they live and breathe this idea of data-driven government. So, I mean, that's just incredible leadership. We really appreciate seeing that from the mayor. So let's pivot a little bit. So, we just kind of wrapped up our 4th annual Smart Region events that was convened by ASU. You were a guest on the connected education topic with the co-host Chris here. Any key messages? I mean, it's such a big topic nowadays, especially with COVID, the pandemic. Connected education. Talk to us about your kind of view on that.
So a few things. I mean, one, we have 3 incredible school districts here in the city of Tempe, Tempe Elementary, Tempe Union, and Kyrene. And frankly, for us to maintain our standing as a smart city, we have to continue to work with and collaborate with our local school districts, with their superintendents, with their governing boards. They really are creating a pipeline of talent that will help to keep Tempe competitive well into the future. And so I think it's critical. And here's the thing, just a story that I would tell, when we first moved to New York back when I was in 4th grade, my mother was a teacher in New York City public schools. And one of the things that she would tell the realtor is she would ask, how are the schools in this neighborhood? Or how are the schools in this city? And if the realtor told them the schools weren't that good or they didn't have a good rating, she would tell the realtor to keep driving. Now, I mean, at the age of 8 or 9, I didn't frankly understand what any of that meant. And I didn't understand how the quality of the schools related to the house that we were going to buy and the backyard I wanted to play in. But at the end of the day, of course, as mayor of the city, I totally understand it now. If your school systems aren't doing well and they're not graduating kids who are ready for college and university life, you're going to have a really big challenge. But fortunately, we have 3 exceptional school districts with great leadership here in the city of Tempe. And that's been tremendously helpful when it's come to them, feeding into our university system, but also as well, attracting really high-end jobs. And so, from my, and then the other thing I could say too, just, even kind of very briefly, putting on, my hat kind of with ASU Prep, we have a very robust digital program. And now we're at a point where, when I went to school, I know I don't look very old to people, but I'm 43 years old. And at the point that I was going to college back in 1996, when I first started at the University of Michigan, people weren't talking about online education. It wasn't something that actually existed. But now, we know that if kids get to a college environment and they haven't taken probably at least one online class, they're already starting at a very big competitive disadvantage. And so, that's also part of the experience as well, is it's learning how to navigate the online, virtual, digital world if you're going to be successful in today's world. I mean, you very simply cannot function in a lot of occupations or in a lot of parts of our life here if you are not comfortable in an online format. We have especially saw that over the last 2 years, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic and so many meetings being held the way that we're having this interview right now in a virtual environment. And if you struggled with that, it was a real challenge getting through these last couple of years. It was a challenge anyway, but not knowing how to navigate some of these virtual options made it even more challenging. So I would say, from my perspective, education is a really critical component of what we do here in the city of Tempe. And honestly, we wouldn't be the smart city that we are without the foundation we have of our 3 school districts, Arizona State University, and the Maricopa Community Colleges system.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that your 40 square miles has already been developed. How do you look at the growth in Tempe? I know I was in a unique position for 6 months. ASU had me on loan to the Department of Education. I came back because I was downtown Phoenix. I came back, and in 6 months, this place is already transforming with Novus, and along Rio Salado has already had major progress. So how do you look at growth? And then how are you thinking about housing and affordability and all that? It's just complicated is how I look at it.
It's very complicated, but fortunately there are public policy nerds like myself who actually really enjoy this stuff. I mean, I really do. I mean, if anyone who really knows me well, I mean, folks that I work with here at the city of Tempe, whether they be other council members or staff, know that, I mean, I'm kind of a hardcore policy wonk, and I really like getting into all of those very minute details. But quite honestly, I mean, we're a city that's going to continue to grow. The notion that people are just going to stop moving to the city of Tempe or stop moving to Maricopa County or the state of Arizona, that's just not going to happen. So we have to, and kind of the theme of our conversation is plan in a smart and intelligent way to make sure that we're prepared. We have to make sure that, as we continue to add more business units, but also, more residential housing units, we have to make sure that, we're dealing with traffic issues. We don't want to become a city where you've got virtual gridlock, not just simply during rush hour, but at all times during the day, because there's just too many people and we haven't figured out how to move them back and forth between their homes and their workplaces. And so, from my perspective, we have to just figure out how to do these things in a very smart, well thought out, planned way. The city of Tempe has a great relationship with Arizona State University. They've obviously grown tremendously in the 20 years that Dr. Crow has been president of ASU. But we do have very regular conversations. He and I have a quarterly meeting just to sort of talk about what are some of the big projects coming up for the city of Tempe. And he'll kind of fill me in on a lot of ASU's plans with the Novus Innovation Corridor or otherwise. And so, quite honestly, we have a responsibility, as the two sort of biggest entities to make sure that we're talking to one another, that we're communicating, and that we're planning in a very well thought out fashion. So when it comes to housing affordability, though, my big thing is we have to make sure that we really have housing for people of all different income levels within our city. One of the first things you see when you come south on Mill Avenue into the city of Tempe, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but there's a sign on the west side of the street that says, welcome to Tempe. We are a diverse, inclusive community. And that's exactly who we are. That's who we strive to be. That's who we have been. And so that, for me, and the way that I interpret that statement is you have to have housing for people at all different income levels and people of all different occupations and backgrounds. And so housing affordability really is critical. And we're having that same struggle and challenge that everyone else throughout the entire country is having right now. But the city of Tempe really is doing everything we can. We have a proprietary affordable housing plan called Hometown for All, which I could probably get into a little bit more. But, once again, being the policy nerd that I am, I don't want to totally nerd out too early in the program. But we really did see a need to create really what came down to 11,000 additional affordable and workforce housing units by the year 2040. So we decided to come up with our own proprietary initiative in the city of Tempe that we think will really help us get to that goal and preserve people's ability to live here within the city of Tempe. We actually, and it's a big deal because I had a meeting probably 9-10 months ago or so now with 9 of our hotel general managers in the downtown. And the biggest message they had for me was, there are challenges on a whole host of fronts, Corey, but at the end of the day, the biggest challenge for us is really the lack of affordable housing. We have a hard time not necessarily hiring people to come work here, but we have a harder time retaining them. Because if you're driving 30, 45 minutes or an hour to your job, the minute someone actually offers you, a couple more dollars an hour, you're going to say, you know what, I'm getting paid more money and I'm not burning through all this gas. And that was before gas prices were over $4, and so we really have to have a situation where the housing is close to where people are working and commuting to. Because they're not going to be able to, continue to go back and forth, from the West Valley all the way to the hotels in the downtown. At some point, they're going to find another opportunity and they're going to be gone. So our imperative, quite honestly, is to create housing opportunities that are close enough that people can either walk or take, the bus or the Mill Avenue modern streetcar that'll open up in April, or bike, or whatever it happens to be, that will keep it inexpensive enough that they're able to continue working at that establishment to really create some longevity and some stability, not only for themselves, but also for the companies that they're working for. So that's a really critical need that we have in Tempe, and it's something that I know we are tackling head on.
That's a really interesting point. I'm sure similarly, the university has a similar problem for the students themselves. If they're living on campus, it has to be affordable. If they're living off campus, it needs to be affordable, so they're not spending all the time traveling. So that's a great point, because that used to be the solution, right? Buckeye, just go move in Buckeye, and then you'd be stuck in traffic. And who knows?
And Chris, we just have to say congrats, Mayor, for being named the Advocate of the Year from the Housing Coalition because of this work. So that's just tremendous.
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm very appreciative of the Arizona Housing Coalition. I really enjoy this work. But I'm supported by an incredible group of council members who share the same vision and the same objectives and goals that I do, and by staff members who do a really incredible job from an operational standpoint, carrying out the hopes and dreams of the city council. So, really appreciate you saying that, and, really appreciate the Arizona Housing Coalition for the recognition.
That's great. We're going to dig into the partnership with ASU. You've kind of weaving that in throughout. So when Mark Wittenberg and Rosa and Chelsea were here last, they mentioned that you had a new focus on public safety and human services as an area of interest. Because we were asking them to look out in the future, and that was about a year and a half ago now, or about a year and a quarter. Any progress or key initiatives that have come out of that you're willing to share with us?
There's a lot actually that came out of that. Let's see what if I can hit some of the high points. So one of the first things, actually the first big initiative that I had when I became mayor of the city of Tempe was forming something called the Public Safety Advisory Task Force. And it was in the wake of George Floyd's death that, I made a decision that we really have to talk about addressing these issues with members of our public. Many times, members who've been very actively involved in Tempe for quite a number of years, but also bringing in voices that historically hadn't been part of these conversations. And that process was made even more challenging by the fact that we were undergoing a huge surge in COVID-19 at the time, and we couldn't meet in person. So we're having a conversation about a potentially very sensitive issue, and we have to do it all in this sort of virtual format. But I can tell you that, that Rosa and her team, Jonay Harrison, White L. Holmes, and, supported by Mark Wittenberg and the team from IT, they did an excellent job when it came to, I should even go beyond excellent. It was exceptional. Bringing in 22 people from all over, our communities, some Tempe residents, some not, some who'd been involved in the civil rights movement and in marches that had taken place, some who hadn't, but people really coming in from all different backgrounds backgrounds and dispositions to have a really thoughtful, robust conversation about what, not just public safety, but community safety would look like moving forward. And so there have been a lot of things, initiated as a result of that. One of the things that I'm very excited about is our police chief, Jeff Glover, has been just amazing to work with. I've known, Chief Glover since he was a lieutenant with the police force and later a commander. And he's really come up through the ranks here within the Tempe Police Department, and very excited to have him here as our chief for roughly the last year and a half. But the great thing about a lot of those conversations that we were having with that task force is he was in each and every one of the meetings. And you're talking about 7 meetings that lasted, 3 hours in duration each. And he just viewed it as critical that he be part of that discussion to really hear the viewpoints of those in our community. And then as he was sort of, trying to figure out how to structure the police department moving forward and, with kind of an eye towards community safety, he really took all of that in and has put forward some very forward-thinking plans for how he wants the Tempe Police Department to be structured moving forward. But what we also talked about many times, though, was public and community safety. Many times people think about the police department, but it's not just the function of the police department. A lot of the issues that were brought up as a part of that conversation were really human services concerns. They were concerns around homelessness. They were concerns around people experiencing mental health challenges. And that is where our human services team and our director, Naomi Farrell, come into play. She works exceptionally well with Chief Glover on trying to, figure out what solutions need to be had, and frankly, what's the best entity to frankly handle them. There are certain situations where clearly the police department is the right division to be called in. If someone is, clearly has a weapon on them or something of that nature, that's a situation where the police department, needs to respond, and they do very effectively. But if there's a situation where someone just happens to be, currently unsheltered or really experiencing a crisis when it comes to their own mental health, we have other services within the city of Tempe, our Care 7 team that deals with people who are really experiencing challenges with mental health, or our Hope team, which is our homeless outreach group that goes out into our parks and in downtown Mill and a lot of other sections, the river bottom at Tempe Beach Park, and really works to get people off of the street or out of parks and connect them with housing and the services they need to get back on their feet. And so, but you can't really have a really comprehensive community safety plan if your police chief and your human services director aren't really working hand in hand. But we're very fortunate in the city of Tempe that they do, and their divisions very much follow their lead. So, there's been a lot of really great things that have come out of that partnership and the interdepartmental work that they've done. And I'm just really excited to see what comes next.
Awesome. That's really interesting approach. We had a person from Indiana's Children Health and Services, and they had to do the same thing. If they couldn't stay out of their functions to look at it holistically, they realized people were being set up when they didn't have the ability to serve in the way they were being asked to serve. The police don't know necessarily; they're not human services experts. It's a great story. So, all right. Well, we do have a couple of common questions as we wrap up, and just curious, if you had the help to do more, what would it look like? Whether it's connections or someone listening or a partner, like tell us a little bit what you're trying to do that maybe you're stuck or just wish you could do even more of. It might frame an idea.
That's an interesting question. And I can think of a whole number of answers because, when you're mayor, you could always use more help and more thought partners. And so I'm definitely never going to turn away help and additional assistance. One of the things that is maybe sort of an interesting topic is talking about the sort of changing demographics of Mill Avenue. And many times people think of our downtown as a place that's just sort of, solely inhabited by college students. And clearly having ASU right in your backyard means you're going to always have a lot of college students in the downtown area and sort of around the university. But at the same time, we're also getting a lot of other people who now live in the downtown area. So our demographics are rapidly changing. You've got a lot more market rate apartment complexes in the immediate vicinity. I happen to live in one of them right down the street. So I live right in the heart of downtown Tempe. You've got Mirabella at ASU, a senior living facility right at the southeast corner of Millen University. You've got all of these new hotels, the Canopy Hotel, the Westin. You've got the Omni Hotel that's currently under construction at the southeast corner of Millen University. That's going to bring 330 additional hotel rooms and our first 1,000-person conference facility here at this in the city of Tempe. For years before, we would have to many times turn away large conferences because we didn't have the conference space to hold that many people for larger conventions or trade shows. But that now is going to be solved with the presence of the Omni when that officially comes online. So you've got a lot of people coming into the downtown who are not students, who are definitely in a very different age bracket and perhaps a different income bracket. And so one of the stories that we're trying to begin to tell to a lot of folks in the private sector, perhaps people who want to do new food and beverage concepts and a whole host of other things, that Tempe has and especially even the downtown area, you've got a much different demographic and a much different mix of people than you once had probably 10, 15, 20 years ago or so. Sometimes it's a little bit challenging to tell that story because people have a perception that becomes very hard to penetrate.
50-cent beers aren't what you're looking for?
Say it again?
50-cent beer deals aren't what you're looking for?
The reality is that, in a college town, you're always going to have those. You're always going to have the beer deals, whatever.
But I've seen it with the hotels. You have such a different demographic, and it's not just the parents of the students; it's people coming different. That's a really good point. So, So you're looking for people with creative concepts to serve this really unique and growing group. I love it.
Absolutely. I think, going back to that word we talked about before, diversity. We've got a huge diversity of people who are living here and working in the downtown and living around the downtown. And we are looking to diversify and bring in very different options moving forward, because you will always have, your sort of more college establishments, given the large number of students that we have, and we welcome the students. They're part of what makes the city such a vibrant place and creates the culture that we've come to enjoy for so long. But you also do have a very different demographic that's moving down here now and working in our city that's looking for different options. So it's a story that I'm going to continue to tell to folks in the private sector, probably ad nauseum. But the reality is, I feel like that's part of, my and the city council's responsibility. It's to talk to people about the changing demographics of downtown and our need to, frankly, evolve due to those changing demographics.
Yeah, that's a great story to tell. We know, we can't do this show by ourselves, and I'm sure you've had plenty of help along the way. Our last question is just, is there anyone that you're particularly appreciative of that you want to call out? And selfishly, as you've gotten to know us and the urban complex, whether you think they'd be a great guest on the show. Love to know.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to you both for having me. I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about a little bit about, what myself and the city council do and highlighting the work of our staff, talking about Rosa Inchowski and Mark Wittenberg and the great team we have here at the city of Tempe. So I just appreciate the opportunity and the platform to discuss it. I think that you're honestly, I don't really have any guest recommendations, but I'll actually, let me go back. I've changed my mind.
You're okay to do that.
I've changed my mind. I would say, a very, good guest or couple of guests to have on might be, a couple of people who have, who do see the changing sort of demographic of Mill Avenue and the downtown area and are really working to assist us with that transformation. And that would be John Graham from Sunbelt Holdings and Lorenzo Perez from Venue Projects, who we are negotiating with right now to do the redevelopment of the Hayden Flower Mill, which is the arguably the most iconic structure in the entire city of Tempe. They've got a very very cool, interesting, forward-thinking vision for what that can be, to frankly activate that space and breathe new life into an older building, but still manage to preserve the interesting charm of the building. And the reason why the downtown was named Mill Avenue in the first place is because of that flour mill. I think they would be very interesting guests to have on the show to talk about what interested them in wanting to redevelop the flour mill project, but also, what's making them want to invest in downtown Tempe. I think that would be a very interesting conversation to have. There are a lot of people who are doing very interesting work in this community each and every day. I think about, folks like Kurt Kramer at over at George Oliver, who's doing some redevelopment work also in downtown. Very cool stuff. They kind of do a lot of what Lorenzo does, with venue projects, except their focus is much more on office buildings. So I think people like, Kurt Kramer and Lorenzo Perez, John Graham, I think would be great people to interview in terms of talking about what their vision is for the downtown moving forward, but also why they chose to set up shop in Tempe, quite honestly.
Love it.
That's great story. Well, it's our pleasure to have you. That's what this podcast is for, is finding the great stories, great leaders to inspire others to do more. And so with that, the Urban Complex gives a big note of thanks to today's guest, Corey Woods, the mayor of the city of Tempe, Arizona. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
The Greater Phoenix Economic Council, known as GPEC, was named the top economic development organization in the U.S. in 2020. As a data-driven regional organization, GPEC serves as a strategic partner to companies across the world as they expand or relocate to other markets. Over the past 31 years, GPEC has fueled the Greater Phoenix economy by helping more than 850 companies and creating more than 154,000 jobs. Leaders in Greater Phoenix are building the nation's most innovative and connected smart region through the Connective. This community-driven applied research model deploys technology at scale. For more information about GPEC, visit gpec.org. All right, Don, that was Mayor Woods of Tempe. What do you think?
Dynamic, right?
Oh,
I mean, it's so awesome. What a great leader to have, especially, kind of right when an ASU have been ASU in the city of Tempe. What a great leader. I mean,
not to mention he's inducted March of 2020.
Oh my gosh, what a crazy time to come in, like you said, and then they're dealing with COVID and issues around kind of the riots and things like that. I mean, what a time to come in, and I mean, incredible leadership to come in at that time and just be so successful in everything he's done. And let's be honest. I mean, there's very few, I think, in my mind, leaders, elected official leaders that live and breathe data as much as he does. And really,
oh my God. It was even more so. I've heard about it, but it was even more so.
Totally. I mean, and he makes it such a point to talk about it, do initiatives around it that, like I said, it's reverberating through the entire organization. I mean, if, our guests, our people, the audience was listening to what Mark and Rosa said in one of our very first podcasts, they talked all about how they're a data-driven government. And guess what? It's because their elected officials like Mayor Woods talks about it, makes it a point to really highlight the fact that, they really want to make their decisions based on good data. So I just think what we need more elected officials.
We really do, because you heard them like, okay, you might get lucky with a decision one time, but if you can inform and make better decisions and then you get trust and
how powerful was that? Like, when you could tell your citizens that we're not making a decision because this is what's going on in Maricopa County and this is not what's going on in the state of Arizona. We're making decisions because this is what's happening in Tempe because we have data.
And here's why your taxpayer dollar is going to go to good use, because it's solving this problem that the data shows. And this is the data around the options. And, we've included you, at least some representative of you as a resident and key people that know this stuff. It's powerful.
Powerful, right? Super powerful. What'd you think? I mean,
the other thing I thought was really impressive that he wove through there a bunch of times, all the way down to the elementary school level, was just talent, like thinking about talent and how to leverage education and because that takes years, right? Obviously, as new as he is, he hasn't had a huge impact on the timing, but he knows how important it is. He's been at ASU Prep, which is the K-12 or the K-12 side of ASU, and And then he talked about these great districts that are there. They talked about the Maricopa community colleges and ASU itself. Like, if you don't have an educated workforce, it's hard to keep out of the problems of homelessness. It's hard to adapt to a changing world. The whole reason why Novus and growth of Tempe are going up, because they want to reach these amazing students. And we don't want those students leaving ASU to go to California. We want them working right here. And so guess what? The vision of redevelopment of Novus is to bring the best research right here. And that helps Mayor Woods and Tempe, that helps ASU. It's just it's a flywheel, and it's really exciting. So his focus on pipeline, his focus on data, they're really, really crucial.
And how powerful too, to also then not get excited by the growth and, the high wage earners, but also proactively think about affordable housing, and to win Advocate of the Year from the Arizona Housing Coalition. I mean, that just shows that he's thinking about everyone, not just, the high-end, high-wage earners. He's saying, how are we ensuring that there's affordable housing for everyone, right? No matter how much you earn. And that's just, I think, powerful, because he's right. We don't want you driving 30 minutes to access your job here in Tempe. We want to ensure that you've got, access to your affordable housing right next to where you work. And so, again, what an incredible leader. I'm going to really enjoy the rest of his time as mayor. Then, who knows? Maybe we can see him in another office, continue to lead.
And another place before we jump to a different topic is, like, I thought what they're doing with hotels. Remember when Tempe only had one hotel, and it was a fine, but and now there's 8 of them. And he had his board with these general managers, and they hone in on the problem. And then he talks about that problem. Then he brings in data to try to solve that problem. Talks to the university about that problem. And they share the problems, and then they bring policy, they bring research, they bring students, they bring data. And guess what? Now we're getting more hotels and more hotels. And now they're solving other things. And because if you can serve that clientele and people want to be there, and it's a great city, and then the restaurants are coming. And I thought his ask was so different than I expected.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
At the very end, I want people to want to serve this new group. Don't think we're a college town anymore. We've still got college students. But think about this dynamic and diverse community of all incomes and all races. And he's definitely asking the right questions. And
makes me want to move to downtown Tempe. I'll tell you that.
Not a bad place to invest, that's for sure. And I'm sure that's John Graham knows that. So
so cracks in the pavement. What do we have?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about, you heard some of the things they're trying to figure out is how to get people like those that work at the hotels, how to get the students on about transportation. I found something, 7 ways cities can make transportation safer for women. Now, as I read through the list, a bunch of these things would make it safer for me too, but I still think it's an interesting topic. First, consider women's needs in transportation design. Go figure, ask them, understand what's unique. But brighter station lighting, platform markings, just make it clear what's going on, make it feel safe. Family fares, so it could allow a single payment for multiple folks, as opposed to trying to fish around for everyone and figure out where that's going. I know that would help me as a single parent. Trip planning apps. How do you get safety embedded in the app, and how do you understand your routes? That way you can inform folks. We've talked about the ASU mobile app all the time. I definitely think that's important. Enabling communities to create ways to help riders find safe spaces or connect with volunteers to get information. I think that's great. People want to help. Shared bike and scooter mobility. I know in Tempe, there's a lot of work being done with skateboards and bikes and scooters. And so you're definitely there. And then finally, transportation data that breaks out differences by gender for planning purposes. And back to Mayor Woods, data, right? You get good data, you make better decisions. Anything jump out in that list? I think it's nice to see they're actually thinking about specific demographics. It helps change the game if you can put yourself in the shoes of the user.
Yeah, literally what I was going to say. I think it's really cool that this is starting to become a part of the planning process. Not just we need a light rail station, put a light rail station up. It's starting to think. I mean, this quote in here that says, I'm not going to read her name, but she goes, "If I'm going to Denver at nighttime, I would never take the light rail." You don't want your people having to say, right? You don't want that kind of decision being made simply because of safety, right? And it's a woman that would not write it because she, didn't feel safe. And so you really have to start to think, how do we, like housing, how do we have housing for all? How are we building transit for all, right? And ensuring that, again, it's because of what you talk about all the time, putting the user at the center of everything, right? And here they're just saying, hey, it's not just a person, but how about a woman, right? And so I think it's really cool that they're doing this.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, another amazing episode. Good to see you, Dom, and we'll see you all soon. Take care, all.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to The Urban Complex. Smarter cities for a stronger tomorrow. Please find us on where you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. We do love your feedback. Let us know if you have ideas for guests or questions to air on Cracks in the Pavement via social media. The Urban Complex is found on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Or just shoot me an email, chris@theurbancomplex.com. Until next time.